Hi everyone and welcome back to That UFO podcast. My name is Andy and I am here with your November preview pod, November 2024 nonetheless. Lots to let you know about on this pod, some great guests coming up, a reminder of some of the documentaries out or coming your way, and of course some listener call-in info. So strap in for this one, folks. First off, tomorrow after this pod comes out, I'll let you know that's Friday the 8th of November. I'll be releasing the interview I recorded a few weeks ago with Fred and Erling from Project Hessdalen. For those unaware, Project Hessdalen is a truly scientific study of light phenomena and sightings of craft in the area of Hessdalen in Norway. It was great to hear about the work that's been done by Erling for decades. People may know the name Erling Strand, now being carried out by Fred, and what they would like to do going forward. A lot of that, of course, will require funding, but also volunteers with various different expertise. So it may be something you listening to this right now can help with. You'll enjoy that one, folks. We always say it's a worldwide phenomena, so check out what's happening in Norway when that interview drops on Friday the 8th of November. It's a quick turnaround for this next recording as Ryan Wood returns to the podcast along with Anthony De Lorenzo. They are going to discuss their co-authored book, UFOs, Who Knows? It's a look at famous quotes through the decades from celebrities, scientists, politicians and the like. A great coffee table book, and it's a really fun read as well. Maybe a good idea to pick it up as a gift for Christmas for someone. As part of the show, I'll also be discussing Ryan's late father, Robert Wood, and some of the work he has done that inspired Ryan to research UFOs. Robert Wood inspired many folks to study UFOs as well over the years, a regular with Richard Dolan as well. Robert was known for managing research projects focused on advanced propulsion systems and anti-gravity. Fascinating stuff, folks. So get your questions over for Ryan and Anthony on their new book. Just now, Beyond is a new UFO series on MGM Plus, and the feedback and reviews from all of you to me on it have been pretty positive, which is great to hear. Initially, a lot of folks, I think, were sceptical about the traditional UFO series on mainstream TV, nothing new, etc, etc. But episode 2 out of 4 has just been on in the US and starts to dive into the history of the topic, experiencers and much more. It's pretty fast paced, it doesn't stretch anything out too much, which I think helps me enjoy things like this a little bit more when I think I know a lot of the material that's already covered. But you also learn some new bits, and do you know what? Ahead of those hearings we're going to talk about on the 13th of November, it's a good refresher as well, so I've really enjoyed it. I mention this series again because Brian Bender is one of the talking heads. Folks may know him as a contributor to Politico and other sites. He's also an advisor to Americans for Safe Aerospace. Brian will be joining me for an interview on the podcast. I'm looking forward to hosting Brian. I'll get his take on a lot of the current state of the UFO topic and what he expects to see at the hearings coming up in Washington and how the changing political landscape will influence the progress of any potential disclosure. So look forward to hosting Brian on the podcast in the near future ahead of those hearings. On Friday the 8th of November, it's a busy day because around the world on Netflix, George Knapp's docuseries will premiere Investigation Alien. In this gripping... I'm going to read the synopsis now, this isn't just me being dramatic, folks. In this gripping docuseries, legendary reporter George Knapp travels the globe to uncover new evidence about UFOs and investigate their presence on Earth. I believe it's a 10-part series. I think it looks fantastic. I really like George and his work, so I may be a little biased in that way. George is due on the podcast with me after the series drops to discuss the series, and of course, we're going to look at the fallout from those hearings on the 13th of November. So get your questions over via email for George Knapp. Always a popular guest, I don't need to tell you that. The email address ufouapam@gmail.com. And please folks, send over any questions at all, even if it's just random listener questions. I love getting them in, I've had so many recently. A quick side note on Netflix documentaries. So one controversial series just released is The Manhattan Alien Abduction. Now this follows the story of abductee Linda Napolitano. Now, I've watched the first episode at least, and I'll save my thoughts on it because I'll share them on the actual podcast at some point. I need to finish the series. It is only 3 episodes. I say controversial because Netflix are actually now being sued as the main focus of the show, Linda, says it has defamed her by including interviews and content from Carol Rainey. That's Carol Rainey, sorry. See my accent. I can't say Carl or Carol. Jesus, there we go. Carol Rainey. She is a skeptic of Linda's story, and Carol is also the ex-wife of famous UFO investigator, the late Bud Hopkins, who plays a big part in the series. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, so why not send me over some listener questions for any of the guests and include your thoughts on this series too, and of course the George Knapp series once that begins as well. Still got lots of guests to inform you of, but before I get to the rest of them coming up this month, can I just thank everyone who supports the pod on paid platforms? It's greatly appreciated, and from the price of a coffee, I always say that, but it's literally £1 or $1, $2, you can get ad-free early access to episodes and bonus content that doesn't go out on the free feeds. Always incredible to think anyone gives up some of their hard-earned cash to support me and the podcast. Hopefully you feel you get value back on that as well. You can get free trials of that service via Patreon and Apple, so why not start those now if you've ever thought about subscribing. You also get access to the now infamous That UFO Podcast Discord chat. It's a real good bunch of folks, I would never tell them that, in there who share various views on the topic as well, without all the toxicity that can come with social media. So if you sign up to the podcast on the paid platforms, you get a link to that Discord chat as well. All the links for signing up are in the description below. If you aren't signed up and listen on the free feeds, then you're hearing this. Huge thank you just for listening to the podcast and the adverts that go a long way to helping me out as well. And if an episode has a sponsor, then check them out. Use the coupon or code to get a little something back yourself from that. Much like the sponsor for this episode, which is Uncommon Goods. Good transition there, folks. Spark something uncommon this holiday season with incredible hand-picked gifts from Uncommon Goods. If you're listening to this podcast, then I at least know, like me, you don't mind something a little bit different to the norm, folks. That's why with Uncommon Goods, they are here to give you a great deal ahead of the holiday season. I've already picked up some bits for the family ahead of Christmas. My wife doesn't listen to this, so I can tell you she's getting a cool little knitwear hat and scarf combo that is handmade in Nepal, and it's going to keep her warm as the cold sets in. And for the kids, there are a lot of options here, folks, and it's stuff different to the norm you get on various different websites as well. I've picked them up a set they can all use. I've got 3 little ones, and it's a DIY ornament advent calendar that's going to keep them occupied on various different nights ahead of the big visit of Santa, of course. So whether you're shopping for the little ET in your life, someone special, or looking for the best Secret Santa gift in the office this year, then look no further. When you shop at Uncommon Goods, you support artists and small independent businesses. Many of the items are made in small batches, so if you see something you like, get it now before it sells out. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/thatUFO. That's uncommongoods.com/thatUFO for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods, we are all out of the ordinary. If you hear ads like that, folks, and think grrr, then like I mentioned before, check out one of the paid subs and you'll miss them completely. So thank you very much for putting up with me, the ads, and the podcast in general. Any questions on that stuff that comes up, please just drop me an email, ufouapam@gmail.com. Now, for the rest of the month, I think the hearings in Congress on the 13th of November are going to take up a lot of the conversation space. We now know that former Rear Admiral Timothy Gallaudet is confirmed to testify, but other than that, there are only rumours, no other confirmed names yet, despite what you might see online. Like I say, those hearings take place in Washington November 13th. I think they're about 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I've got a few folks looking to do listener call-ins before then, so if you want to get involved in a listener preview, then email me please, folks, or drop me a message, and you can chat with me to share your thoughts, not only on the hearings, but if there's anything else you want to get off your chest in terms of the UFO topic, that's also very welcome for the call-in. Other guests coming up this month, there are lots of them across a wide range of topics. We have cattle mutilations investigator and author Chris O'Brien, a topic folks have asked me for some time now to get an expert in on. You may have seen Chris on various shows, including Netflix Unsolved Mysteries, some of those episodes recently. Chris has a huge background investigating all types of UFO-related phenomena, so get your questions in early for that one, folks. John Greenewald, FOIA expert and founder of theblackvault.com, joins me after the hearings to discuss what went down in Washington, the future of the UFO topic, and more. Listen, John can be divisive online and likes to get into debate, shall we say, but can't everyone? And it's good to get some differing opinions at times as well. Not like the world isn't divided enough as we speak, but hey ho. Looking forward to speaking with John and getting some of his time. He's always a popular guest, so get your questions over early for John Greenewald of the Black Vault. Another returning guest is former pilot and host of his own channel, The Leto Files, Chris Leto, back again to discuss his work and boots-on-the-ground investigations. Chris does some great analytical work as well on UAP videos, and of course we'll have a lot to say on the UAP hearings from the 13th of November. By this point, I don't think I need to remind you, get your questions over, you know where to send them. That email address I've read out multiple times. It's also in the description of the podcast. Also, folks, researcher and author Warren Ejus. He was back on the podcast in 2021 discussing his first book, and I've been in touch with Warren now for years. He is joining me to discuss his latest project, Close Encounters, exploring the mysteries of alien abductions. And I was very honoured by Warren, who asked me to write one of the kind of forewords or promotions of his book. So thank you to Warren for that and including me on there. And I remember speaking to him, like I say, back in 2021, and it being a real favourite interview of mine. You got all the big names, folks, to speak to in this topic, and honestly, some of the lesser known folks have a real passion and enthusiasm for the topic that really shines through, and I'd urge folks to check out Warren's work. So Warren's going to join me. Get your questions over on his book all about close encounters and the fascinating history of alien abductions. I'll give you a little bit of the synopsis for Warren's work. Ejus's work is not intended to convince the sceptical reader of the plausibility of alien encounters. Rather, through his thorough research and compelling prose, Ejus presents readers with carefully considered case studies of abductions, complete with each individual's background, other plausible hypotheses, and supporting evidence for each theory, allowing the reader to come to their own conclusions about alien abductions. I really enjoyed the book, folks. We'll be discussing it in more detail when Warren joins me. Listener call-ins, folks, definitely be some after the hearings, but I'd like to get that one done before the hearings as well. A few folks have been in touch, so drop me a message if you want to come on. Really casual conversation, couple of minutes of your time, up to about 10 or 15 minutes to discuss what your thoughts are ahead of the big date in Washington. November has already been a crazy month, I don't have to tell you that, and it's barely started. The conversation, I reckon, will be red hot as the month goes on, including a couple of breakdowns in there as well, no doubt. As I've said before, your questions that get sent in are probably the best part of this show now for me. Whether it's for guests, members' content, or used on breakdowns, they're always sparking a great debate and discussion, and I think it gives a real genuine snapshot of the overall UFO conversation. So whether you are sceptical, dyed-in-the-wool believer, whatever it may be, send them over. I won't shirk away from reading out a question because I don't agree with it or don't think it's right. So get those over, folks. So here's to a fascinating end of the UFO year. Thanks for listening all the way through this preview, which is now going nearly 15 minutes. And be sure to check out my latest interview tomorrow with Project Hessdalen's Fred and Erling.